Part 81. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 801. A military camp outside Bucharest, the capital of Romania, is heavily guarded, and the guard level has been rarely raised to the yellow level. This level of guard level is equivalent to the third level combat readiness of the Chinese army. Not only will the security work be strengthened, but also combat readiness mobilization will be carried out at a certain level, and vacation transfers and retirements will be stopped. The troops will be trained for combat, and logistics, equipment, and other levels of support will be carried out. If necessary, the front line positions will even be unsealed. In short, once this state is entered, it means that the government troops of this country can be involved in a small-scale local war at any time. At the same time, the Romanian government army dispatched a reorganized battalion to control the deserted laboratory castle, waiting for experts from China and Russia. When Su Ming brought Zhao Yun and others, as well as Ludmila and a group of survivors to the presidential palace, the office staff of the presidential palace listened to the incident in detail. The president was extremely shocked, especially after professional medical experts examined the shark man Baker. The president immediately realized the seriousness of the matter and issued a yellow alert order. Mr. Su, Ms. Ludmila, the president has personally notified the top leaders of your government through the special line. The two governments have sent a special plane to pick up the two of you and the survivors. Of course, the injured Mr. Baker will go with you. In a bomb-proof basement in the military camp, there is a guard every 3 steps and a sentry every 5 steps. Even the soldiers on guard belong to different units and supervise each other. The speaker is a senior staff member of the Romanian president, who is authorized by the president to take full responsibility for this incident. Please convey our gratitude to the president. Ludmila nodded. The staff member nodded and smiled slightly, looking at Su Ming. Su Ming held Nangong Yan's hand and squeezed it gently, indicating that she was fine and didn't need to be too nervous. Then he thought for more than 10 seconds before speaking to the staff member. Thank you for the help of your government. After I return to China, I will definitely explain to my government Romania's firm position in this incident and its determination to crack down on behavior. Hearing Su Ming say this, the staff member was slightly relieved. The president's nervousness and serious attitude are not entirely because of the discovery of a huge background and cruel research organization. There are too many bad people in the world. Not to mention the faraway, has blatantly established a country. The key is that this organization appeared in Romania. Once the news leaks out, it will have a serious impact on Romania's economy and investment, and tourism will be greatly impacted. Moreover, this incident directly involves 2 major countries in the world, China and Russia, 2 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. It is simply a hot potato. Once these 2 countries believe that the Romanian government is suspected of harboring a terrorist research organization, Romania will fall into a great passive position in the world, damn it, especially Russia, which has always wanted to intervene in the situation in Eastern Europe. There is another reason. This terrorist organization is too sensational. The remaining survivors and the monster like Shark Man are all witnesses. It is conceivable how much shock this news will cause worldwide. The United Nations may even impose economic sanctions on Romania or even send troops directly. At this time, the attitudes of the 2 permanent members of the Security Council are very important. Therefore, the various actions taken by the president afterwards were largely due to the issue of standing in line. He was even willing to give up the Shark Man and the laboratory castle, which had high research value. I think Miss Ludmila should think the same as I do. Su Ming looked at Ludmila, who was in a daze. Ludmila has rich experience in handling international affairs. She was somewhat dazed by the sudden change. She didn't realize it at first, but after hearing what Su Ming said, she immediately understood it and nodded quickly. Of course, I will explain all this in detail in the report submitted to Moran International. The boss behind Moran International is the Russian government. Everyone knows this, but no one will tell him. The staff was relieved after receiving the affirmation from the two people, and said to Su Ming, "That's great. Mr. President told me that you two, oh, all the gentlemen and ladies present, were frightened on this trip to Romania, and we deeply apologize. When this matter is over, Romania welcomes everyone to come and travel. If you are interested, you can settle here." Speaking of settlement, several women all looked bitter. This is really a joke on the country. Su Ming thought about it more deeply. It seems to be quite good to settle down and get a green card and permanent residence. Romania's taxation is very low in the EU. Putting aside this incident, the welfare here is good, the environment and climate are pleasant, and it is a good place to settle down. But it's not that far yet. Until the next morning, two special planes flew from the east, escorted by fighter jets, and carried out an air handover with the Romanian government fighter jets at the Romanian airspace border, and then landed at the airport outside the military camp. The survivors were all Russians. The one who came to pick up Ludmila and the others was a general with a beard, and the one who came to pick up Su Ming was a leader of Yangchuan City. The leader was not a high-ranking official, just a director-level cadre, but he was from a prominent family, working in the Provincial Security Bureau. Director Su, the superior leaders took the news very seriously and ordered me to escort you back to China and fly directly to the capital to report to the leaders. The director was tall and stood there like a javelin. It was obvious that he was from the army. "Okay, wait a few minutes." Su Ming nodded, then turned and opened his arms to Ludmila, who also said goodbye to the Russian general and walked towards him. A deep hug, regardless of love between men and women. "It seems that the matter is very serious. You have to take care of yourself," Ludmila whispered in Su Ming's ear. "I understand, and I will also give you an old Chinese saying." Su Ming smiled, "If the sky falls, there will be tall people to support it. You are a middle-level cadre of a mercenary company, so don't get involved. If even the two governments can't avenge Baker, we are also powerless." Ludmila nodded and said solemnly, "Take care." The two flights went their separate ways, one flew directly to Moscow and the other flew directly to the capital of China. Su Ming and his group, including Zhao Yun, Cheng Cheng, Su Meng, Nangong Yan, and Xiao Hu, disappeared for more than a month in the eyes of the zoo staff and the employees of Daowin companies. Even with Wang Jianxi's connections, they couldn't find out where Su Ming, Zhao Yun, and others had gone. They only knew that after returning from Romania, they were taken directly to the capital. As for the cause of the incident, the specific location, and when they would be back, they didn't know anything. It shouldn't be a problem, Wang Jianxi analyzed to Wang Hao based on various clues. With Su Ming's current identity, if the country wants to move against him, there is no need to be so mysterious. Besides, there is no reason to move against him. Then he will never be seen alive or dead. Wang Hao frowned. Will he get into trouble? Don't think too much, just do your business in Daowin Group. If he really can't come back, your power and mine will be useless. Of course, this is the worst plan. According to your father's experience, it is almost impossible. Wang Jianxi smiled. Maybe this is an opportunity. He can be received by the leaders of the capital, which will be of great help to future business. Su Ming and his friend's disappearance made it not only the Wang family who were panicked. Zhao Qian was the first to panic, and she waited for news in the zoo almost every day. A group of police officers from the Nangong family tried their best to find out the news, but even a deputy mayor was powerless. The Nangong family had a background of department-level cadres at most, so they couldn't find out anything. They only knew that they went to the capital with Su Ming. Although there are all kinds of rumors about Daowin companies, Su Ming had laid a solid foundation before, so even if he was not there, there would be no major changes in the short term. 2 months later, Su Ming and his group suddenly returned to Yangchuan City. But they did not tell anyone what happened, even to someone as close as Wang Hao. Su Ming kept silent. Strangely, Since Su Ming came back from the capital, Daowin Group has developed rapidly, and each company has been helped by God. Shortly after he came back, the zoo approved the 5 scenic spot, and it was managed by Daowin Tourism Company together with the Back Mountain Protection Area, and the government did not intervene. Daowin Tourism has carried out drastic reforms, dividing the 5 scenic spot into 3 major areas: Kinling Nature Reserve, Film and Television City, and Theme Tourism Leisure Resort, aiming at Disney. Our goal is, where Daowin Tourism is, Disney will not be able to make a profit within 20 years. Everyone with a discerning eye understands that as long as Su Ming has enough money, he can buy it. Dashan wine industry has been sold nationwide in just half a year and has been rated as a well-known Chinese brand. According to normal rules, once sales stabilize, this winery alone can plan to go public separately in a few years. In terms of breeding, Daowin Agriculture Co., Limited has been integrated, with the goal of developing pure natural and pollution-free green food planting. In a short period of time, the market quota is not very large, but the prospects are absolutely broad. As for the earliest entertainment company focusing on online live broadcasting, Wang Hao is mainly responsible for preparing for listing on the new third board. The new third board cannot be compared with the main board and the growth enterprise market, but it is just a springboard. As long as the performance remains stable and rising, it is not impossible to go public. Daowin Hongjiake suddenly opened all over the province overnight, becoming a catering group with 14 branches, and there is a trend of continuing to expand to other places. Half a year later, the magical blockbuster World of Warcraft, produced by Daowin Film and Television Company and Long Wu, an independent producer, was released. It received mixed reviews at home and abroad, but the global total box office reached $1.5 billion. After Daowin Film and Television Company divided the profits, the net profit was close to $500 million. This money has injected new vitality into the entire Daowin Group. Daowin Real Estate's retirement community project has finally been completed and began to advertise nationwide. At the same time, Bei Group, the largest local real estate company in Yangchuan City, and Daowin Group have joined forces to bid for 2 large shantytown renovation projects in Yangchuan City. After a year of hustle and bustle, art theaters across the country have returned to calm. Most of the first batch of multi-party cooperative art theaters can no longer survive. There is no way. There is only one theater in a city. With such a small plate, there are several people in charge. It is impossible to do it well. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Daowin Cinema acquired a number of art theaters that were about to go bankrupt and established the Daowin Art Theater line. The Warcraft movie brought not only economic benefits to Daowin, but also opened up the international market. After Warcraft, Daowin Cinema filmed a series of international films, the most famous of which is the movie version of Game of Thrones. Like the Lord of the Rings series, it is divided into several parts. The first part has been filmed. It is Chinese and international. In addition to changing foreign scripts, Daowin Film and Television also focuses on excellent domestic themes. It seems that it is addicted to playing with episodes. IPs such as Feng Shen Acting and Journey to the West have also begun to be adapted and filmed. According to Su Ming's plan, after these movies are completed, even if only half of them are profitable, Daowin Film and Television Company will complete its momentum, and this company will be listed on Nasdaq in the future. On the surface, Su Ming's personal wealth has not expanded too much, at least there has been no change in magnitude. In addition to the addition of a small island in the Pacific Ocean, the funds on the books have decreased. There is no way, there are too many places to spend money. But everyone can see that these are only temporary. Within 3 years, when Daowin's companies are listed one after another and form a business empire, his wealth will expand to an astonishing level overnight, and he will enter the wealthy class in Asia and even the world. It doesn't matter how much money you spend, you must save his life. In a nationally renowned military hospital, Su Ming looked at Park Cheol-bin lying in the intensive care unit with the respirator, and said to the vice president of the hospital with a gloomy face. After living happily in the zoo for more than a year, Park Cheol-bin's condition was finally out of control and his life was in danger at any time. He was awake for no more than 2 hours a day. Mr. Su, he has at most 1 year to live. In the next few months, he will be very painful. The dean shook his head. With our current medical level, there is absolutely no way. This is not the first time Su Ming has come to this hospital. When he returned from Romania, they spent half a month in this hospital. The expert vice president in front of him is one of the few people who know the truth. The only thing we can be sure of now is that his condition is very similar to that of the shark man. It should be some kind of artificial gene mutation. The shark man's mutation is a complete failure, while his mutation symptoms are relatively mild. Unless the other party can provide the source of the mutation and the mutant gene fragment, it is impossible for us to find the mutated gene from countless genes, most of which are unknown genes, and provide a treatment plan, the dean said. Su Ming couldn't help but burst out a swear word. What's the difference between saying this and not saying it? It's completely impossible to ask that mysterious organization to take the initiative to treat Park Cheol-bin. Thinking of this, Su Ming was full of anger, or grievance. Not only did Park Cheol-bin not get saved, but even his revenge for his father became a fantasy. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 802. The appearance of the shark man almost overturned the common sense of the medical community from a technical point of view. A living mutant, at least temporarily alive, has broken through the limits of human genetic technology. From an ethical point of view, it has also crossed the bottom line of being a human being. Not only the Romanian government attaches importance to it, but also the top leaders of China and Russia have paid great attention to it, and even have some exchanges with the Western world. The power of the government machine is terrible. Almost several major countries in the world launched investigations at the same time, and soon found that there is indeed a secret organization, God's Garden, which is the mastermind behind the laboratory castle, and even the death of Su Ming's father is directly related to God's Garden. However, this organization is very well hidden, and even the state machine can hardly figure out its detailed information. A mysterious organization with a huge background, although engaged in research, has not caused fundamental harm to various countries. Strictly speaking, there is no threat to the national regime for the time being. On the contrary, if they want to take action against this organization, countries may pay huge resources and costs. After all, this is not is. Even if it is, the major countries in the world are not of one mind. As long as it does not involve their own actual interests, no one wants to poke this hornet's nest. Therefore, all parties involved, including Su Ming and Ludmila, were ordered to keep silent. From then on, they would not mention anything related to God's Garden, and would not investigate any related matters. The corresponding compensation is that all countries fully support all parties involved in this incident. Whether doing business or politics, they will get great help and have a smooth journey. In addition, several major countries have reached an agreement to ban all open actions of God's Garden. In other words, the two sides do not interfere with each other. The most direct example is that Professor Eisenberg, who has returned to Germany, had a traffic accident for no reason and fell to his death on the winding mountain road. Ludmila is now the first vice president of Moran International. If nothing unexpected happens, she will take over Moran International within 3 years. Several uncles of the Nangong family have been promoted, and the highest has become the second in command of the provincial department. And Zhao Yun's rich idle man is more and more worthy of the name. Several well-known listed companies in China have hired him as an honorary director. This honor is not only an honor, but also a small amount of internal allotment. In terms of total assets, Zhao Yun's net worth is richer than the controlling shareholders of some small listed companies. From a rational point of view, Su-ming and Ludmila understand and even support the decisions of various countries. Going to war with the mysterious God's garden for the so-called justice will only result in a storm without a whim, affecting social stability and making the lowest level people pay the price. To put it cruelly, even if God's garden conducts human experiments every year, it will only kill 100 people, and now that countries have taken precautions, this number will drop significantly. But if the entire God's Garden organization faces a devastating blow and begins to retaliate at all costs, the losses will be incalculable. But reason is reason, and emotion is emotion. Ludmila's comrade in arms, Sharkman Baker, finally died, and died miserably, with tissues and organs all over his body festering. The wish that Su-ming had buried in his heart since he was a child could not be realized, and he could not avenge his father's murder in his lifetime. Now it's Park Cheolbin's turn, and even to this day, it's unclear why Park Cheolbin had a genetic mutation. Over the past year, all the parties involved in the Romanian incident have been doing well, but they are all holding back a lot of anger and are not happy. The overall situation is important, the overall situation is important. Su-ming comforted himself in his heart. After all, without the support of the state machine, he would never be able to go to war with God's garden. The other party is a huge invisible man. Not to mention whether he can beat him, even if he wants to fight, he doesn't know where to put his strength. Do your best. Money is not a problem. I have been collecting old mountain ginseng for more than 100 years. Even if it means hanging on to my life, I will hang on to this child. Su-ming waved his hand and said. Looking at Su-ming's departing back, the expert vice president sighed. Science is used to benefit mankind, but once it breaks through the moral bottom line of mankind, the cornerstone of the existence of the science has disappeared. Is it because the purpose is right that you can do whatever it takes? Once a person becomes a devil for the right purpose, can he really achieve the original right purpose? Experts in every field have probably considered similar philosophical questions. Fortunately, for the vice president, this is just a philosophical question. In a research institute somewhere in Africa. Miss Nicole, in order to maintain Locke's vital signs, the organization has invested too much in him this year. I suggest giving up. He has no perception and will not feel pain. A gray-haired old man looked at Locke, who was full of tubes, and said to Nicole, who was standing beside him. In more than a year, Locke, who was once as big as a small Tyrannosaurus rex, is now so thin that only a skeleton is left. Looking from a distance through the glass of the observation room, he looks like a giant's dry bones. Is there no other way? Facing this white-haired old man with an authority level of LV1, Nicole's attitude is completely different from that towards Dr. Yuri. Killing Dr. Yuri at LV3 will send Nicole to the most difficult laboratory in Africa, but if the core members of the organization at LV1 are killed, Nicole's best fate is to become a high-level test subject like Locke. Other ways, the old man turned his head and looked at Nicole for a few seconds, then made a hum of unknown meaning in his nostrils, and said displeasedly, unless we find the genetic source of the mutation, possess the full spectrum of mutant genes, and obtain gene fragments from the other party. But I can tell you clearly, first of all, even if the number of living things on the earth is 10 times more, according to probability, there will not be such a living thing, and secondly, if there is such a living thing, every part of its body will not exist. They are all extremely precious, and not even a drop of blood can be wasted. The organization will never use it to save Locke. To the organization, Locke is just a failed experiment. After the genetic reversal, he can only return to an ordinary person at best. Worthless. Is what Locke has done for the organization worthless? Nicole asked. Nicole, I was shocked that you asked such immature words. It seems too childish and not your style, the old man said lightly. It seems that your father did nothing wrong in sending you here. Your current situation is no longer suitable for holding an important position in the organization. In addition, I would like to remind you that Locke's nutrient solution and equipment usage fees are almost used up this month. If you insist on keeping him alive, remember to report to the research department regularly. Transfer money into the account. The corner of Nicole's mouth couldn't help but twitch. It didn't matter to her. When she wanted to kill others, Nicole could coldly say that she would dedicate herself to a sacred cause, but when it was her turn, that was not the case at all. The organization's style has always been ruthless, and they are not willing to pay a cent for Locke, who has no use value. For more than a year, all the treatment expenses have been paid by Nicole herself. The money she has earned from working for the organization in the past few years has been I was so consumed by the expensive medical expenses that I couldn't even make up for next month's expenses. As for the father of the committee, Nicole knew very well that she usually pretended to be powerful, but in the eyes of the other party, she and Locke were both a disgrace, especially Locke. The first person who wanted Locke to die was that person, so there was no need to count on the other party. We'll come to the rescue. Okay Nicole, I have to return to Paris today. If the fee for next month is not enough, the organization will stop Locke's treatment. That's it. The old man looked at his watch, said a word, turned around and left. Looking at the old man's back, Nicole gritted her teeth. The source of genes can cause genetic mutations. This kind of creature is not something Nicole has never seen before. There was probably such a person in Abic Castle that day, so Nicole mobilized a large number of people. Nicole once considered telling the organization the news in exchange for organizing a rescue for Locke. But she knows the style of the organization too well. Even if this information is true, the organization may not help Locke, because not only genes are needed, but also a large amount of money, hundreds of millions of dollars. The conversation she had with the old man today was her last hope, but from the old man's attitude, Nicole clearly felt that her last hope was shattered. Not only Locke, but also himself has signs of being abandoned by the organization. For the first time in her life, Nicole felt a deep hatred for the organization. In that case, I'll just do it myself. There were a total of 7 people in Abic Castle that day. In the next 2 months, Nicole used all the resources at hand to find these 7 people and visited them one by one. Unfortunately, except for Avitu, the remaining 6 people were very difficult to get close to. The security guards who were clearly holding down the people around her were amazingly powerful. Twice, Nicole almost lost her life. That time at the Yangchuan Zoo, Nicole was finally exposed. Although the governments of various countries have not encircled and suppressed the Garden of God, they have always maintained a high degree of vigilance. Romanian survivors were harassed by unknown people several times. The governments of several countries immediately made effective responses. Several suspected members of the Garden of God disappeared overnight. In the world, compared with several big countries, God's Garden is just an organization after all, and it is impossible to fight head-on. Its biggest advantage is its mystery. Like an elusive wild dog, it may not be a match for a big man armed with a stick, but it would be troublesome to jump out and take a bite at the risk of being beaten to death. Therefore, there will be a fragile balance that is tacitly understood by both parties. Nicole's behavior touched the nerves of governments around the world, and the fragile balance between God's garden and state power was broken. When Nicole returned to the African stronghold with her tired body, what awaited her was a purge from within the organization. Miss Nicole, your behavior has seriously affected the security of the organization. The committee sent me to take you back to the headquarters for questioning, a security supervisor said expressionlessly. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 803. When Nicole saw the security supervisor with a level of LV2, she knew exactly what he was here for. The security supervisors in the organization generally have a low status. Only the black man in front of her is LV2. He is not responsible for external affairs, but for internal affairs, and is responsible for dealing with senior members of the organization who make mistakes. Wait a moment, I have to take some documents away. Nicole nodded expressionlessly, and walked into her room without waiting for the other party to agree. The security supervisor winked at his two subordinates, and two fully armed soldiers stood guard outside the door on the left and right to prevent Nicole from making extreme actions under impulse. After waiting for more than 3 minutes, Nicole did not appear. The security supervisor was a little impatient and was about to knock on the door. At this moment, the ground under the bed in the corner of the laboratory suddenly opened, and a passage appeared. The bed quickly sank into the ground, and disappeared together with the rotten tooth lock lying on it. Damn it, we've been fooled. The security supervisor kicked open Nicole's door, revealing the not-so-big room, which was empty. Nicole had long disappeared, and from the door, a secret door could be seen under the bed. Boom! A violent explosion occurred in the uninhabited savanna of Africa, with violent flames rising into the sky, and a large mushroom cloud covering the flat ground. 1 kilometer away from the explosion site, the grass on the ground suddenly loosened, and Nicole emerged from under the grass like a groundhog, covered in dirt and grass, looking very embarrassed. Fortunately, I was prepared. Go to hell. Looking at the mushroom cloud in the sky in the distance, Nicole spit viciously, and after coming out from the ground, she turned around and dragged Locke out of the coma with great effort. Rotten Tooth Locke was still in a coma, unaware of everything that happened, as if he was asleep. Nicole stared at the sky for a while, and suddenly sighed faintly, saying to herself, "Ignorance is indeed a kind of happiness." Well, my dear brother, since the organization is not prepared to be responsible for us, then we don't need to be responsible for the organization. Let me turn this world upside down. Half a month ago, Su Ming was attacked by a foreign girl in the back mountain of the zoo, which caused the entire lure community in the back mountain to go out, and all the animals in the mountain followed and tracked her, but in the end she still escaped. This incident alarmed the capital on the same day. According to the information from the capital, not only Su Ming, but also the survivors in Romania encountered similar incidents, and it seemed that they were people from God's garden. Suddenly, everyone was afraid of enemies, but Su Ming was not angry, but secretly happy. I don't mess with you, but you mess with me? Very good. After waiting for more than a month, Su Ming wandered around with energy storage balls all over his body, hoping to encounter another sneak attack, but the other party did not move. Just when everything seemed calm, a huge abnormal disease disaster suddenly broke out all over the world. Several major countries in the world suddenly had many strange cases for no reason. All patients had almost the same symptoms, all of whom had a large-scale muscle atrophy and body function problems. This disease is almost unprecedented in history. It broke out without any signs, but it spread very quickly. Soon, hundreds of cases appeared in Europe and the United States, followed by a trend of spreading to Asia, and sporadic cases appeared in several small Asian countries. This number is increasing every day. Many people who were originally very healthy got sick inexplicably overnight, lost their ability to work and became disabled. Senior experts from all over the world held many consultations, but the final result was not optimistic. With the current technology, it is impossible to cure it, and even delay it. It is only known that this is a disease at the genetic level. What is even more frightening is that genetic diseases usually only appear in heredity, but this time it broke out on a large scale. Obviously, someone is secretly spreading this disease deliberately. At this time, countries realized a serious problem: news control. When the first few cases occurred, most countries did not strictly control the news. Although a few informed countries did control the news, for some reason, it was still reported in the newspapers. People all over the world are concerned about their own lives and safety, and this strange disease immediately attracted great public attention. At first, it was just regarded as a special case, but soon, as cases appeared all over the world, a disease comparable to the plague spread all over the world, and countries around the world finally panicked. The total number of people who got sick is not large, less than 3,000 people worldwide, but the problem is that this disease is completely terminal, and it is worse than death after getting it, and it is obvious that there is a black hand behind the scenes spreading. In other words, everyone walking on the street or sleeping at home is likely to be infected. Chilling. Isn't this the same disease that Park Shulbin has? Somewhere in the capital, Su Ming attended a very high-level secret meeting. The participants included not only Chinese people, but also representatives from Russia, Europe, and the United States, and even a Japanese royal prince, speaking of which, Su Ming has some relationship with this prince, who is Princess Keiko's father. In addition to these senior officials, all the survivors of the Romanian incident were present at the meeting. Our colleagues at the CIA have confirmed that this is the masterpiece of God's garden, said a US deputy minister level figure. The news from Scotland Yard is the same. The royal family's exclusive staff uncovered a secret base in Osaka and found a batch of injectable drugs that may cause this disease. We are willing to share the drugs with other countries and hope to find a solution, but our government hopes. Before the Japanese prince finished speaking, representatives of several countries glared at him fiercely at the same time. The American and Russian representatives coughed hard and knocked on the table. What a joke! Are you still negotiating conditions at this time? The second half of the prince's sentence was held back. Everyone, the Chinese representative who convened the meeting, nodded to the people present, stood up and pointed to the large screen on the wall. On the screen was a very complex chemical model. We also found this drug that causes gene mutations through our own channels. After expert analysis, this drug is difficult to crack in a short time. Our genetic technology lags behind the organization that invented this drug, the so-called God's Garden technology, for decades. If we wait for ourselves to slowly crack it, it goes without saying that even if we catch up now and all countries work together, it will probably take several years. But in the past few years, the other party's technology has also been developing. Moreover, it has caused panic around the world in less than half a year. In a few years, how many people in the world will get sick and what kind of chaos it will be, no one dares to imagine. It's strange. After the Romanian incident, all countries have reached a tacit understanding with the Garden of God. Why did the Garden of God suddenly attack civilians on a large scale this time? The British representative frowned. Not only civilians, they have even started to attack government officials. The Japanese prince coughed and said, there are signs that some members of radical parties in our country may be related to the Garden of God. Our Prime Minister may have been injected with a brain-damaging virus, resulting in. The Russian representative was the toughest and interrupted him directly, slamming the table hard. We should not compromise with these elements. The best choice is to wipe them out. This time, we Americans agree with Russia's point of view, the American representative said. At all costs, we must ensure the safety of the European continent, the French and British representatives said. Okay, everyone, this time we invite representatives from all countries to hold an emergency meeting. Everyone knows the previous topics. After the outbreak of the epidemic, two forces took the initiative to contact our country. The first force is the people of God's Garden. They said that this incident has nothing to do with them. The second force said that they are responsible for this incident and are willing to cooperate with all countries to solve this epidemic, but there is a condition. We suspect that there is a split within God's Garden, the Chinese negotiating representative said. All countries are a little depressed. The people present are basically world powers. Even if they are not permanent members of the Security Council, they are economic powers like Japan, and they have made certain achievements in certain aspects. However, these two forces did not find anyone, but contacted China, making all countries very passive. This is also a matter of course. Among all countries, China has the most gentle image in the world and the most stable national regime. Since we must deal with the official, of course we have to choose a powerful, credible, and trustworthy power. The reputation of the United States and Russia is too bad. Other countries are either in a mess or are followers of these powers, and are not worth cooperating with. At this point, everyone's eyes turned to Su Ming, who was sitting in the corner of the conference room. Comrade Su Ming, the condition proposed by the second force is to meet with you alone. Are you willing? We respect your personal wishes and will not force you, the Chinese representative asked. Stared at by representatives of several major countries, Su Ming nodded, okay. Even if it weren't for the epidemic, Su Ming felt that this was an opportunity. As the Chinese representative analyzed, there was a split within the Garden of God. In front of us, even the government is unable to deal with this behemoth, but now is the best opportunity. The Chinese representative paused and said in a deep voice, Comrade Su Ming, you have to think clearly. This time, since we don't know the other party's details, in order to prevent the other party from making more extreme actions, we can't send forces to protect you. You are in a certain danger. I understand. Su Ming stood up, looked around at the representatives of various countries, and smiled slightly. I can take the risk to negotiate. Although I don't know what the other party wants to talk about, I also have a condition. Regarding the stability of their own country, representatives of various countries looked at Su Ming, waiting for him to put forward conditions. For a big country, it is not difficult to ask for people, money, or government support. Unexpectedly, Su Ming's request was very simple. No matter what the outcome of the negotiations is, I hope that the Chinese government will take the lead in the subsequent response. This request was beyond everyone's expectations. It seems that if China takes the lead in dealing with the subsequent events, it seems that China will have to pay more manpower and material resources, and even transfer the conflict with God's garden to China, which is not worth the loss. But everyone present has rich experience in international affairs. Whoever takes the lead means who can get the most benefits from it. A panic world around the world. If China takes the lead, once successful, China's international reputation and status will be greatly improved. At the same time, most of the genetic technology that may be involved will also be mastered by China. Everyone, if you don't agree to this condition, you can think of a way on your own. My life may not be worth much in the eyes of other countries, but it is still very important to me, seeing that the representatives from various countries were hesitant. Su Ming said calmly. He said something and then sat down. The Chinese representative also looked at everyone with a smile. We in Russia supported. The Russian representative was the first to speak out. Of course, China taking the lead is not as good as Russia taking the lead, but the relationship between China and Russia has always been good. If it had to choose a non-Russian country to take the lead, Russia would rather choose China. We also agree, but we require that the epidemic in Europe be brought under control first. After a slight hesitation, representatives from Britain and France also expressed their stance. Europe is the hardest hit by the epidemic. 78% of the world's patients are Europeans. Moreover, both countries have their own big troubles. The United Kingdom has just left the European Union, and its domestic economy and politics are in difficulty. France is plagued by economic recession and refugee issues. I am so exhausted that I really can't withstand the big fluctuations. Among the 5 major countries, the last one to express its stance was the US government. The representative of the United States said angrily, "It turns out that this is a replica of a United Nations meeting. All the 4 permanent members of the Security Council have expressed their stance. If the United States does not agree, will you say that we do not obey United Nations resolutions?" The representative from China chuckled, "Of course not. However, your country's presidential election is coming soon. The top priority now is to choose a good president. Let us deal with the little things in God's garden. Everyone present except the American representative smiled knowingly, while the American representative smiled bitterly. It can be considered unlucky. Now that President Obama's term is coming to an end, he hardly cares about practical matters. He focuses on arranging his career after retirement and becoming the image representative of the country, and the two presidential candidates are known as the worst candidates in history. One is crazy and the other is weak. People are no longer choosing which one is better. There is a general understanding that no matter who comes to power, they will not be worse. Therefore, within a year or two, the United States will have strong military and economic strength, but will not have a core leader. It will be difficult for the United States to become the leader of major international affairs. Okay, we agree, the American representative shrugged. After the meeting, representatives from China specifically found Su Ming. Xiao Su, sit down. When alone, the big leader was still very kind, like an elder, holding a teacup, and said, "Time is urgent, so I will get straight to the point." Seeing that the other party came to see him, Su Ming probably guessed that he had something to tell him privately, so it would be better to say it directly. He nodded. "Leader, please tell me." "The country hopes that through this opportunity, we can wipe out all of God's garden," the leader said solemnly. Su Ming frowned slightly, "But our previous attitude towards God's garden." He didn't say it directly, but his previous attitude towards God's garden was that we would not offend others unless they offended us. I know what you're thinking. To put it bluntly, the previous attitude was to feed a tiger and create trouble. The leader put the teacup on the table for a while and said, "Through this epidemic, the leadership has made up its mind and must not let such a capable person go. There is an organization capable of carrying out large-scale terrorist activities. No matter how high the price is, even if we don't need any of their technology, we must completely eliminate this organization. This is a disservice to our people and future generations." Responsible? Su Ming nodded. "Yes, this conflict within God's garden is a rare opportunity. Yes, if you don't take it, you will be blamed. This time, the top management has made up its mind and authorized you to take full responsibility." Super Zoo. Author, Yin Seg Nian Bai. Chapter 804. After nearly 2 years of construction, the La settlement area on the Kola Peninsula has become quite large. A small city is built on the mountain, with hundreds of families settled here and complete facilities. Su Ming also bought 2 retired ships from the Russian Navy at a low price to serve as fishing boats. Although they are retired warships, most of the weapons on them have been dismantled, and the parameters in all aspects are not comparable to ordinary fishing boats. Light weapons are all retained, and even pirates dare not touch the Tiger's butt. Except for nature and regular troops, these 2 ships have no enemies on the sea. Since they were bought a year ago, they have harvested a lot, and the income has long exceeded the purchase price of the boats. In addition, together with the local indigenous people, they have jointly established a large-scale animal husbandry and breeding industry. Although the peninsula is slightly cold, it is rich in plants and animals, especially reindeer, which cannot be eaten in China, but in the Kola Peninsula, it is flooded. With a little use of modern means, it is a gift from nature to mankind. In less than 2 years, the settlement had 42 newborns, and the Lure people, who had been on the road to alienation, gradually began to prosper. Starting from 3 days ago, the 7th Fleet stationed on the peninsula had some seemingly inadvertent transfers. Several cruisers cruised at the estuary, and a group of Russian elite soldiers also disguised as civilians and moved into the Lure settlement, bringing a lot of high-tech weapons. My lord, the boys have never given up military training in the past 2 years. I have a hunch that the decisive battle between God and the devil has arrived. In the largest room in the settlement, the high priest Ali was excited, not like an old man at all. According to the records of the scriptures, when the devil ravaged the earth with plague, God sent his messenger to cure the plague and eliminate the devil. 3,000 years later, the world was full of vitality. No. Su Ming shook his head decisively. I can't take anyone to negotiate. But my lord, the negotiation site is at the bottom of the gate of hell. If you don't bring people, it's too dangerous, I said. Su Ming didn't know why the other party chose the deepest part of the hell gate for negotiation. Here, it can be said that there is no way up and no way down. Once a fight breaks out in such a place, there will be no time for rescue. But the other party can't escape either. Okay, Ali, at least I see the other party's sincerity. From the details, I am in a passive position. From the overall situation, the other party has taken the initiative to give up the advantage. This is a normal balance of power method, which I think is very good. Now let's discuss the deployment of the periphery, just in case, Su Ming said. 3 days later, Su Ming drove into the entrance of the Hell Gate mine for the second time. Outside the mine, there was a whole regiment of Russian soldiers and La troops secretly deployed, and further away, on the sea more than 10 kilometers away from several cruisers. For the missiles on the cruiser, more than 10 kilometers can be completely ignored. All of this is to ensure Su Ming's safety to the greatest extent. Once the other party attacks Su Ming, even if Su Ming is in trouble, the other party will pay with his life. However, Su Ming has a hunch that the other party is sincere, otherwise there is no need to make such trouble. Carrying a body of energy storage balls, driving an off-road vehicle in the mine, it took almost 2 hours to reach the bottom of the mine. Seeing the scene in front of him, Su Ming was slightly stunned. The bottom of the mine was originally an abandoned military base. At this time, the cement fortifications outside that blocked the view had been demolished. All the rooms were brightly lit, and a tall blonde woman seemed to be welcoming him. I am Su Ming. Su Ming got out of the car and looked at the blonde woman and said, "You are very trustworthy. I hope we will have a pleasant cooperation in the future. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nicole. I don't have a surname. I am a former member of God's Garden. The genetic mutation virus in the world is currently spread through my private channels." Su Ming frowned slightly. No matter how beautiful this woman is, she seems to be very kind now, but this alone has caused the epidemic in the world. She is definitely a cruel person to the extreme. Similarly, it is not a pity to die. I don't quite understand why you do this. Don't you know that no matter how we cooperate next, you have become the world's public enemy? Su Ming asked. Don't worry, I'll tell you slowly. You're very honest, at least you didn't lie to me. As long as we cooperate, we can forgive the past. Nicole smiled, turned, and walked into a house, and pressed a few times on the wall. The ground around the room suddenly sank slowly, and Nicole waved, "Come on, let me tell you everything, and then we can talk about cooperation." In the deepest part of the gate of hell, Su Ming and Nicole stayed for a whole day. It turned out that this gate of hell became a stronghold of God's garden not long after it was abandoned. In fact, the reason why there are all kinds of horror legends here and it was abandoned is that in addition to the fact that no resources can be mined, it is largely related to the power of God's garden in the Russian government. After decades of use, this place was also abandoned. Nicole's task in God's garden is to be responsible for the disposal of various strongholds after they are abandoned. This stronghold is the first one she took over. The people of God's garden were searching for her. This stronghold was so old and happened to be under the eyes of the Love people and the Russian fleet, that it became the safest hiding place. Nicole had been here half a year ago, so she appeared out of thin air. The people who had been guarding near the gate of hell recently did not find her at all. When they occasionally came down to search, she was hiding in the abandoned laboratory underground. God's garden was a secret force formed during World War II, directly under Hitler himself. Its original purpose was to optimize the human race. As the Nazis retreated on the battlefield, God's Garden turned to researching super soldiers, hoping to reverse the decadent war situation. But the Nazis were defeated too quickly, and World War II ended before any substantial results appeared. Some scientists withdrew from the institution, while others were attracted by the previous research results and continued their research under anonymity or with other identities as a cover. In the Western world, scientists have extremely high social status and economic strength. The genes and human evolution studied by God's Garden are also the most advanced technologies of mankind, so they have attracted many high-end talents, wealthy people, and politicians. In the decades after the war, the world's economy and technology developed rapidly, and the God's Garden organization also grew rapidly. Of course, only a few core members really knew the truth about God's Garden. At most, there were no more than 100 people. Most of them were friends who used the research results to exchange interests and power. The research results of God's Garden were not completely successful at the genetic level, and it can even be said that only a small corner of human secrets was revealed. But just this small corner has contained very amazing medical achievements. There are shadows of God's Garden behind several large medical institutions in Europe. But in order to obtain these achievements, the price paid is also huge. God's Garden uses living people and animals for research. Every year, more than 50 people die in research, and countless animals die. At the same time, God's Garden also uses various means to obtain the genes of outstanding people all over the world for research. Su Ming felt a chill on his back, because in Yangchuan City, God's Garden selected hundreds of samples in 10 years, all of which were local outstanding people, and obtained genes without the other party knowing. Nicole couldn't remember whether Zhao Yun was there or not, but Su Ming was definitely there, because Su Ming was the fastest rising in Yangchuan City in recent years. Unknowingly, he was used as a test subject. Because the means of obtaining genes are complicated and even have no standards, various accidents may occur in the process of obtaining them. In terms of genes, the most outstanding achievement of God's Garden, or the only major achievement at present, is mutants. It can combine the genes of humans and animals to produce mutants that are much stronger than humans. However, the success rate of mutants is very low, less than 1%, and most mutants have serious defects. Mutants like Locke who can grow normally are extremely rare. In most cases, mutants will die miserably after being injected with drugs, such as Ludmila's comrade Beck. If Ludmila remembers correctly, a young experimental subject was once lost in China. God's Garden even found a poaching team to find it. Su Ming. And the revenge for Su Ming's father's murder, which he had always been obsessed with, also got the answer. It was not a poaching organization at all. As one of the first outstanding animal researchers in China, Daddy's genes had long been targeted. At that time, the way to obtain genes was too rough, which directly led to a gunfight. Su Ming suddenly realized that it was no wonder that he looked familiar. His genes, Zhao Yun's genes, and even Daddy's genes were all in the gene fragment library of God's Garden. And Su Ming's genes have been proven to be a mutation power that can induce gene mutations. In other words, he is the source of human genetic evolution. According to Nicole, his genes belong to God's genes. However, Su Ming's genes are not enough in the gene library of God's Garden. Nicole needs Su Ming to keep Locke by his side for a year and provide him with the genes necessary for treatment at any time. This is also the reason why Nicole made such a big fuss. However, according to Su Ming's guess, this is not a matter of providing genes, but using mental power to heal injuries. Because he can clearly feel that this comatose man with rotten teeth has a sense of mental power. Just like Su Ming. Just to save people, Su Ming frowned, then what can you provide? Although God's Garden cannot ensure that the mutants are 100% successful, it can make the mutants 100% unsuccessful. By chance, a genetic mutation virus was invented, which is what you call the epidemic. I can provide detailed information about this virus, Nicole said. God's Garden can also provide it, Su Ming said. Then why should I choose to cooperate with an extremist like you? This is exactly why I came to you. Nicole seemed to have expected it a long time ago, and said calmly, God's Garden can provide treatment, but did they provide it? No, because they know that once the ability to endanger all mankind is exposed, God's Garden organization will become the public enemy of all countries in the world. Yes, continues Su Ming said. Also, we are on the same front. Nicole stared at Su Ming and laughed. It won't be long before the core members of God's Garden will know that you are the source of purification. As long as God's Garden exists for one day, you will be their prey instead of a guest of honor. Similarly, I am also the enemy of God's Garden. Our common goal is no cavities, Su Ming sneered. Yes, no cavities, Nicole nodded. The code name of this operation is called cavities. If a tooth in a person's body is necrotic, it must be pulled out. Paris, France. Mr. Deputy Minister, do you have time in the afternoon? I would like to invite you for a cup of coffee. There are also a few work issues that I don't quite understand in the office of the Deputy Minister of the French Ministry of Education. The new secretary gave the Deputy Minister a very provocative look and asked with a smile. Oh? This afternoon? Okay, of course the Deputy Minister had already had ideas about this beautiful secretary, but romantic French men have always been accustomed to picking up girls with their own charm. Using power to suppress is simply insulting, love. I know a very interesting coffee shop, but it's a little out of the way, said the secretary. It doesn't matter, there may be some surprises in a remote place, said the Deputy Minister lecherously. There will definitely be surprises, said the secretary with a smile. In a bathroom in the U.S. Capitol. Mr. Senator, we are from the CIA, please cooperate with our investigation. A pistol silently pressed against the back of the senator who was peeing, frightening the gun in front of him and making him pee in his pants. What are you doing? I'm a senator, the future whip of the Democratic Party. The agent knocked him out with a punch before he finished speaking. In a luxurious box in the Ginza building in Tokyo, Japan, the music was deafening, and several leaders of the ruling party were no longer serious as they used to be on TV. They hugged the hostesses in their arms and touched them with a wretched look. The door was suddenly pushed open, and 7 or 8 big men in black suits rushed in from outside. Baka, the leading politician, was furious when the revelry was interrupted, and he slammed the table. Is this how you Yamaguchi-gumi entertain guests? Call your boss, I will make him cut off your little fingers to apologize. Yamaguchi-kun, why is it you? He recognized the leader, who was the adopted son of the current Yamaguchi-gumi leader and the most promising successor in the future, Yamaguchi-Seiji. It is said that he is in charge of the Black Dragon Society, the most powerful armed force of the Yamaguchi-gumi. I'm sorry, the Yamaguchi-gumi has been a royalist since the Meiji period. We are here on the orders of the emperor, please do not resist, otherwise you will be shot on the spot. Buckingham Palace, London, England. According to the British Constitution, the highest power of the country belongs to Her Majesty the Queen, so every Saturday afternoon, the Prime Minister will come to Buckingham Palace to report to the Queen on the important matters of the week. Under normal circumstances, the Queen will not comment on state affairs, and this report is mostly spent drinking afternoon tea in the beautiful garden. Today is no exception, but when the Prime Minister left, he left a senior staff member. Her Majesty wants to see you alone. The Prime Minister smiled and patted the aide's shoulder. Don't worry, it's probably about the maintenance of Buckingham Palace. The whole country knows that your family has the most professional construction company. Several security guards took the Chief of Staff to a small house in Buckingham Palace and never came out again. Almost at the same time, similar scenes were happening all over the world. A group of politicians, scientists, and wealthy people were taken away quietly and never appeared again. After Nicole provided the list of core personnel of God's Garden, several major countries launched collectively at the same time. In front of the terrifying state machine, God's Garden, which had lost its mysterious veil, had no power to resist and was uprooted almost overnight. Following this, the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, led by China, announced to the world that they had developed a cure for the epidemic. Just as the epidemic spread rapidly at the beginning, after the cure was available, the epidemic was quickly brought under control, and a large number of patients began to show signs of improvement. China has gained a high reputation in the international community. At the same time, it was announced that a human gene research institute would be established, led by Chinese scientists and participated by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. In order to ensure that the institute was established on a humanitarian basis, the 5 countries would supervise each other and the research projects would be open and transparent. The first research project at present is artificial prostheses. In 3 years, 4 companies under Daowin Group, Daowin Entertainment, Daowin Tourism, Daowin Agriculture, and Daowin Catering Group, were listed on the new Third Board, Growth Enterprise Market and Main Board respectively. Daowin Pictures, after a series of Chinese and foreign fantasy films were a great success, was listed on Nasdaq again. The stock price reached $89 on the first day, setting 2 records, the record of Chinese film companies listed in the West and the record of the highest stock price of world film companies on the first day of listing. On a small island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, shaded by green trees and pleasant environment, a yacht was parked at the pier not far away. In the helipad behind the villa in the center of the island, there were 2 armed helicopters with the Daowin logo printed on them. Nangong Yan, with a big belly, walked on the beach accompanied by Ludmila. Not far away, there was a row of sun chairs on the beach, and several beauties who were invited to accompany Nangong Yan were basking in the sun leisurely. Hong Fi Fei, Ding Jing, He Baoan and several other people were on the list, as well as several famous little goblins in the company. Of course, these big and small goblins are all well-known leaders in their respective fields. Zhao Yun, with his wife and children, squatted on the dock and fished leisurely. Cheng Cheng was not interested in fishing, a patient job, and asked Park Cheolbin this and that. Park Cheolbin's condition was getting better day by day, and he could already stand up with a cane. His devilish face gradually twisted, his face was already extremely ugly, and after the twist, it looked a little handsome. Su Meng and another big man with rotten teeth who never smiled, led a group of lure people to patrol the island. Since Nicole was executed, Locke, who was rescued, has hardly smiled, and he is not even close to Su Meng, but is very close to Su Meng, who is also a mutant. Su Meng, this damn bastard, actually invited a group of confidants to accompany you. Ludmila didn't notice at all that she was one of the confidants, and she was angry for Nangong Yan. If he really had an affair, he wouldn't have invited them to play openly, Nangong Yan said. He's about to be a father, where has this bastard gone? He hasn't shown up for several months. It's so irresponsible, Ludmila said indignantly. Him. Nangong Yan laughed, looked at the sea in the distance, and said to herself, this man will never belong to just one person. Maybe just like the superhero in the movie, exploring the mysteries of the world is his true destination. Her eyes seemed to lead to the distance. In the Bermuda Sea, the waves were surging, and there were thunder and lightning. It seemed that God and Satan regarded this place as a battlefield and were fighting a fierce battle. A fiery red figure emerged from the dense clouds. The little crested ibis had grown into a huge firebird, bravely traveling through the waves and thunder. On the back of the crested ibis, there stood a man. Let the storm come even more violently. Su Ming opened his arms, as if embracing the storm in Bermuda. As if responding to his call, the sea suddenly boiled. In the sky, countless birds appeared. In the ocean, groups of sea beasts and fish surfaced, joined Su Ming's team, and headed towards the deepest part of the Bermuda whirlpool. It is said that in the depths of the violent sea, on the top of the cold mountains, in the deep valleys, in the turbulent streams, and in the lush mountains and ridges, there is the most fundamental secret of life. Do you want to get it? Then go and find it. Life never stops, struggle never stops. End of the book. Dividing line. When I wrote the 3 words "end of the book," I had an indescribable feeling. 2 million words, 11 months, and it has come to an end today. This book is my first novel. As I said once, it has its advantages and disadvantages that are inevitable due to lack of experience. Fortunately, both the advantages and disadvantages have taught me a lot, and I have learned how to write a novel and tell a story. What supported me to write a book that I was ready to give up and reach 2 million words is the 50,000 readers of this book and the more than 400 friends in 2 groups. There are always some people who come and go in life. No matter if they are new or passers-by, whether they are genuine or pirated, as long as my words bring you even a little pleasure, I think my purpose has been achieved. What is more pleasant than entertaining others and yourself, and making some money to spend? You gave me such an opportunity. I used to think that I would be very sad on the day of finishing the book, but when this day really came, I found that I didn't. As the last sentence said, life is endless, struggle is endless. There is no time to be sad, and there is no time to sigh, and I will go all out to prepare for the next book. All the experiences and lessons of this book will be accumulated to serve the next book, and we will prepare for the new book with all our strength. The next book, Rebirth, has already had a rough outline. Next, we will revise and refine it, and write some manuscripts. It is expected to be published on November 20th. Life is long, and the future is not far away. See you in the rivers and lakes. Separated again. The new book has been released. Rebirth and Dreaming. With more than 10 years of experience and foresight, Zhao Zijun plunged back to 2001. What should we do in the face of life's big joke? Should we fight back or enjoy it with our eyes closed? Zhao Zijun said, change your posture and do it again. The golden opportunities that I regretted in those years, the various styles that I passed by in those years, the obsessions that I buried in my heart and never let go in those years, and the dreams and future that I haven't realized yet. In this life, start all over again. Just as Zhao Zijun did not expect that he would be reborn, his old friends in that time and space did not expect that this unremarkable boy around him would rise at the speed of a comet and shine in the sky. New book release, welcome. For other books by the author, there is a direct lane in the author's recommendation.